The Steers keep rolling 1-0 in district. Hello, everybody. Terry Bennett here on the Graham Football Show, brought to you by the Graham Athletic Boosters right here on S2S Sports. As the Steers get another shutout, that's 3 in the last 4 games and 4 for the season. Think about it like this. Only 2 teams this year have scored against the Graham defense, Springtown and Decatur. Think about those 2 offenses, too, how impressive holding Decatur. And I know Decatur struggled to start the year, but holding Decatur to 14 points. And then, of course, we've seen now how good Springtown's offense is with that quarterback and the physicality they play. But other than that, nobody's been able to move the ball almost at all against this Steer defense. And they look to continue that this week as they're going to take on Bridgeport, looking to go to 2-0. And then you're going to get the playoff row, as I call it, for the last 3 games of the season after this week with Mineral Wells, Brock, and then Eagle Mountain. 2 of those games at home for Graham. And so you're going to basically have not officially, but pretty much officially booked the playoff spot with this week if you beat Bridgeport. Because after that, you're gonna have 3 games, and even if you lost all 3 of those games, you'd have the tiebreaker over the 2 teams in Bridgeport and Burke Burnett. And it's not like we think Graham's going to lose all 3 of those games by any stretch. So really important game this week. Get the win, get that knocked out, and then you can concentrate on where you're going to be in this district race, because I know some people contend that with 4 playoff teams, district championships have lost their meaning, but they really haven't because of seeding. You want, especially in this region, you want to be that number 1 seed in Region 1 for a Division 2. That's going to be the best path for you to make the playoffs. And it's and if not 1, you at least want to be number 2. After that, it starts getting dicey. You're having to play the 2nd place and the district champion if you're 3rd or 4th. And so you want to try to get number 1, but for sure you want to get that 2nd seed. As always, we're going to be talking to the head coach of the Graham Steers, Coach Clay McChristian, and we'll do that when we come back right here on the Graham Football Show. Do you have a kid that plays sports? Are you yourself a weekend warrior? Then I'm going to tell you something. Check out NeuroGuardPlus.com. That's NEURO guardplus.com. It's a mouthpiece that can not only help with concussions, but can dramatically affect the way you perform. And the mission of NeuroGuard is to, of course, reduce the risk of suffering a concussion when participating in any contact sport, military, anything that you're doing physical that you could take a blow to the head. You might want to put in a NeuroGuard mouth guard. And as I said, it not only helps eliminate concussions, it helps you perform better by simply aligning your jaw properly. And that sounds like such a simple thing, but it is so important because it allows oxygen to get to your brain. And when you get oxygen to the brain, you don't have that fog of sports or that fog of war where you get confused. And if you've ever played football, that's a sport where that can happen. Especially, man, you're in there in the trenches and you take a shot to the side and all of a sudden things are spinning. This mouth guard will help you keep focus by, again, simply keeping oxygen going to your brain 100%. Again, check them out, NeuroGuardPlus.com. And if you play sports, if you have a kid that plays sport, if you do something physical, one of the things that Dr. Hutchinson, the creator of this, was talking about was some people will use it when they're doing yard work and when they're mowing and things like that, where they're being physically active because they know it helps align their jaw and it keeps oxygen going to the brain, which also helps your lungs, by the way, when you can have full breath every time as you're performing. So again, check them out, NeuroGuardPlus.com.
Hi, I'm Josh Bell with the Miami Marlins. I wear NeuroGuard to help with strength and coordination when I'm in the weight room and help with balance when I'm on the baseball.
Terry Bennett back here on the Graham Football Show. Now joined by the head coach of the Steers, Coach Clay McChristian. And Coach, another shutout, a dominating win. More importantly, though, you go to 1-0 in district. What were your thoughts on the Burke Burnett win?
That's the biggest thing, what you just said, was we're 1-0 in district. We just tell our kids focus one game at a time. And, I know that the score kind of shows, kind of what the game went like. But, man, overall, I was just proud of our kids. We went out there. Coming off the bye week, you never know what you're going to get. I thought we had some really good practices that week. We really kind of addressed some areas that we were kind of lacking in. And so we came out, and I really thought our kids were focused. They didn't overlook, Burke at all. And so I thought we went out there and did what we should have done. And it was a fun, exciting homecoming night.
Yeah, I was going to say homecoming night. It can't get much better than that. But I do have to ask you as a coach, and I know you get to empty the bench, and that's really important, getting younger kids some snaps. But is there anything that you can really glean from a game like that?
What you just said, the getting the younger kids in there, some of your close games, you feel bad because those kids practice all week also, and they're just as important to your team because they're putting their time, into this season, and so you feel bad when some of those kids who work really hard don't get in. So a night like that, we got to get those kids plenty of burn, and so when you get to film session on Saturday, the kids are pointing them out, and they're getting to see themselves out there, and I thought I was really happy with our starters. They were as into that game in the second half as the other guys were in the first half, and they were cheering them on. And at one point, we'd turned the ball over there late and about the 25-yard line, and we left our second group in there, and the whole sideline was just going crazy about keep the shutout. And 4 plays later, we got them off the field, and those kids were coming off, and they felt like giants out there. So that's the stuff that's fun to watch, is those backup kids get their chance to shine.
Speaking of shutouts, you're getting kind of used to doing that now. What is that, y'all's fifth shutout or fourth shutout of the year? Back-to-back shutouts. Yeah. I mean, to be fair,
it is.
And to be fair, only one game you really gave up a lot of points, and of course that's the Springtown game. But other than that, this defense is maybe playing as one of the best in the state in 4A Division II.
Well, they really are. They're great. They're so fun to coach. And I was pointing out to the team yesterday is that what makes them so good is that they play that hard in practice. It's hard sometimes to get kids to practice hard, and this group goes out there and practices so hard, and which really makes our offense better because we go ones versus ones, and so we put our starters out there, and they are making our offense work. And sometimes our offense walks off the field going, golly, that was a tough day. And I said, guys, hopefully it's easier on Friday night than it is today because you're going up against one of the best defenses in the state. So take advantage of that. And the same thing with our offense. I tell them, guys, we have a really good offense. And so when they come out there, and I want them to try and shred us. I want them to try and make us look bad. So when you have two groups that can go at it like that during a week, you should see the payoff on Friday.
All right, this week you try to go to 2-0. You take on Bridgeport, a program that's been down. I know there was a little bit of excitement for them at the beginning of this year. They have a new coach. They have a kind of a pretty big senior class. When you look at the film, what are your thoughts on the Bulls?
They've got a really good running back. I think he's been on the varsity since his freshman year. Real tough kid, real strong runner. So yeah, he's one we have to make sure we keep bottled up. And then they've got some height on us. They've got a couple receivers out there that are tall and around the 6'5" range, and so they'll go up there and go get the ball. So they can be dangerous if you allow them to. And defensively, they'll get after you. They fly around as best they can. But it's one of those again that we're not so worried about, the team this week. We're worried about us and what we have to get better at. And no matter what you see the score was last week, you got to get back in the film session and see what areas we can improve on and what areas that we're lacking. And so it's focus on us this week. And if we do that and we play the game that we should play, we should be in a good position.
Well, you actually kind of said something I was actually going to ask you, and this is no disrespect to Burke Burnett or to Bridgeport, but Graham's was heavily favored last week, and you're heavily favored this week. And I was going to ask you, when you're in a game like this, at what point do you start going, okay, let's start getting other guys in. Let's start, emptying the bench. Let's get some snaps for younger guys. Do you have a certain plan in place, or is it just by feel of the game?
It's by feel. You look at the risk reward because you've got to keep your starters sharp. Mm-hmm. There's nothing like games. You can practice all you want, but those game reps at game speed is vital. So you've got to get your starters out there. They've got to get their reps, and then conditioning wise, they've got to keep their conditioning up. So you've got to keep them going, but you've also got to look at the risk factor of, what happens if you do lose somebody when you're up by 30 points. And so that's one of the biggest questions that we have. And we had that the other night, with Rylan, Muncie, our running back, when he'd been he'd been out a few games, and getting him back, he's still not in game shape. And so the idea is, how many reps does he get? And so at one point we're like, let's pull him out in the second quarter. And I got back on the headset and said, man, let's go get him a few more reps. We've just got to get him in better game shape. And I really think we start really seeing a closer version to 100% this past week versus Burke. He was making some runs that we were accustomed to seeing him last year. So I think he needs more of those reps right now to feel comfortable back this year.
Well, one thing about it is after this week, you kind of start what, in my opinion, feels like the playoff row of this district, your last 3 games, I think are going to be the 3 teams that you're probably going to see going into the playoffs with y'all.
I would agree. This will be your playoff group, and so now it's all about seeding, and that's what you want. You want to go, have a good showing, but preparation wise, you've just got to make sure you stay steady and steadfast and doing what you're working on your approach. And I think Mineral Wells next week is they've shown that they're a solid team this year, and they're definitely going to make a playoff push. And then of course the Brock one after that, and then Eagle Mountain has steadily just been getting better and better each week. So I think you're exactly right when you talk about the playoff teams. I think these next 3 weeks after this one, we're definitely going to be tested.
Here at L4 Media, we talk high school football, 4A, 3A, and 2A in Texas. We talk East Texas sports. We talk NFL, guy talk, movie and booze. We also talk wrestling and so much more. And you can see it all on our YouTube channel at L4 Media Company. Like and subscribe. Terry Bennett back here on the Grand Football Show. As always, want to thank Coach McChristian for joining us. Also want to remind you, if you have any questions, thoughts, or comments, all you got to do is email me, Terry at s2ssport.com. If you'd like to know what's going on in 4A Division II across the state, check out our show, Sideline to Sideline, the Class 4A edition. We also do a 2A and a 3A. You can find those on YouTube at L4 Media Company. You can also find them on our audio-only site, S2SGrantandTerry.com. I usually drop the audio-only on Thursday afternoon. The YouTube shows go up on late Tuesday night after we record them, or sometimes Wednesday morning, just depending on the video. You have to do a little bit more editing sometimes. Like my co-host tends to have potty breaks in the commercials, and so sometimes we have to wait for him to get back and cut out and all that. So if I have to edit those, it might be Wednesday morning, but usually I try to put them up on Thursday night. There's going to be a lot of talk about this district over the next few weeks as the schedule for the top 4 teams get really, really good. And it's almost all of them are all playing at the end. Now, Brock took on Eagle Mountain last week, and they'll get Bridgeport in a couple weeks, but they get Mineral Wells this week in kind of a calibration seeding game, and Brock should win that one comfortably. Coach Cody Worrell, by the way, I have a Mineral Wells and a Brock show. I basically have a 3-4A Division II coaches show here on the network, as 3 of our shows are in this district. And, Coach Worrell's done a wonderful job at Mineral Wells, but they're still a step below Brock and Graham. And so for Mineral Wells, though, they're trying to fight it out with Eagle Mountain for that 3rd or 4th playoff spot. Again, the higher the seed you still want to get. So that'll be an interesting game just to kind of with Brock and Mineral Wells this week, just to kind of calibrate where Mineral Wells is on the pecking order. Because in my opinion, it's Brock and Graham, draw a line, and then it's Mineral Wells and Eagle Mountain, draw a line, and then it's Bridgeport and Burke Burnett. And so it'll be interesting to see how that game will play out this week. And for Graham, stay healthy for this week with Bridgeport. And Bridgeport's an improving team. Coach Aaron Cupp, new guy there. As far as a head coach, he'd been at Bastrop. He'd been multiple places. He walked into a team that's in a rebuild. Been in a rebuild for like 20 years now, it feels like. Ever since the early 2000s, back when they were one of the most offensive, efficient teams you would see in the state in 3A, back in the old 3A, and they were always consistently really, really good, and they were always consistently fast, and just each week you just didn't know what they were going to do offensively, and they were so a fun team, and Coach Cupp's trying to get them back to those old winning ways. All right, that's going to do it for this week. We'll be back next week right here on the Grand Football Show on S2S Sports, part of L4 Media.